Hi, John here. Today we're going to look at Dispatch 1.3. We got a new demo project, we got some new modulators, some improvements to the external input modulator, and we can do feedback patching, which is a big important one. We'll get to that later. First I'm going to talk about the new modulator, which is the Quadrature Modulator. Now what the Quadrature Modulator is, it generates 4 sine waves across one row. So you'll see here that we only have one modulator actually active in the grid across this row, but the 4 different signals are different, and those 4 different signals are like 90 degrees phase shifted from one another. So we set the frequency of the leader oscillator here with this frequency down, and yeah, as we make it faster or slower, all of the other oscillators will get faster or slower as well, and they'll be spaced apart. I'm using that to control the send on this here. If I just adjust these values, you'll see that they kind of move around in like an interesting pattern. This is good for if you're doing like multi-channel like speaker installation stuff or whatever. You can send a sound around 4 different speakers. Here I'm actually using it to send it around 4 different sends, and each one of those sends is like frequency limited. So like we have a bandpass filter at the start and then a different effect before or after. So we have like low, mid, high, and then high. Like say you can like download this project and like dig into how it's all generated or whatever. So on top of like having 4 phase shifted sine waves generated, we can also set each of the follower oscillators to be a division or multiplication of the rate of the leader oscillator. That sounds really complicated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slow this down, and then I'm going to select this first follower oscillator. I'm going to set it to 32 times. And now it's going to go 32 times faster than the leader oscillator, and you can see that represented on the grid here. We can also go slower. So on the next one, I'm going to go like 10 times slower. And so yeah, so it serves as 2 different functions. If you set all of these to 1, then you'll get like phase shifted sine waves, or you can do like weird divisions. You can do like, you can make it 10 times faster, 12 times slower, whatever. When you select something other than like 1 times multiplication, you lose the phase shifted behavior. But yeah, there's a few applications. Like I said, like multi-channel speaker stuff. I'm using it here to send it around, to send audio to different return tracks. Yeah, one of the like nice thing with this is that like, I don't know, with like the live LFOs or whatever, like they're all done in hertz, and this one's done in hertz. But when you get to a lower hertz value, like when we get to around 1, it switches to seconds. And that's just like to make it a bit more readable. Like to me, like 0.05 hertz means nothing, but like 20 seconds, I understand what that is. So that is the Quadrature oscillator covered. Next, let's look at the external input modulator. Now, traditionally, the external input modulator is a way that we map LFOs or sequences from outside dispatch into dispatch. With the feedback patching, we now don't need to like use other modulators. We can just use like one of the rows of the grid to be the input, which is what I'm doing here. So before 1.3, the behavior was through, and this just lets the modulation through constantly pass through. We now have sample and hold and track and hold. So the way that this works is that we can send. So we have like a new MIDI input tab here, and this sets the channel where our MIDI comes from to trigger the sample and hold. There's another way that you can do this, where you just send a MIDI track, you can route it into dispatch, but yeah, there's this way here which kind of makes it a little bit easier. So every time we get a MIDI note in this clip, we get a new sampled value. I'm going to turn this CPU toggle on, and that's going to show you the output thing here. So this is our input, and this is what the value is after it's been sampled. So let me just put this onto the display here. So in through, this is what the signal looks like coming in. Sample and hold looks like this. Every time there's a MIDI note, we sample the value that it's currently stored at. And then there's one other mode as well, which is track and hold. So in track and hold, whenever the note is active, it like lets the signal through, and then when the note's ended, it samples the final value that it was held. So you'll be able to see this if I hold down like a longer note here. So you'll see there, like the modulation comes through and then stops. There's tons of different applications for this. I'm not going to like get into too much. I'll show you one that I'm using it for here. So this sample and hold modulator here is being used to set the decay time of the bass note here, or the melody note. Now the reason that you might want to do that, and the reason that sample and hold is so useful, is that let's say that we have like, we want to set our release time between 300 milliseconds and 6 seconds. And we're going to use a 20 Hz sine wave to do that. So what that's going to look like is, this is going to go really, really fast between 300 and 5 seconds. Now, let's say we want like a 5-second release time, so we want it when it's here. Well, if the note plays and the modulator comes back, it's going to drag the value back down to like 300 milliseconds or whatever, and that's going to cut the note off short. So even though we're moving between 300 milliseconds and 6 seconds, we'll never get a 6-second note because the modulator is coming back and cutting it off. So the way around that is like, rather than just let the signal pass through constantly, we just sample it at the start of each note, and that's what the sample and hold's used for here. So you can see the release time here. Whenever there's a new note, we get a new value generated. And yeah, there's a ton of other like applications for this, but you can like put noise into it and use sample and hold to get like random modulation if that's what you're interested in. Also on this, we can like set the low and high value of the MIDI note that's going to trigger it. So like, what this lets you do is like, you can just limit it to like a certain, so like only 1 octave or whatever will trigger the sample and hold. So you can have like if you merge all of your MIDI into one track, you can like have like the first sample and hold be triggered by 1 octave, the second be triggered by another octave. Set it to like single notes, so just like one drum note or whatever might trigger the sample and hold. Tons of stuff that you can do with that. Yeah. So next, this is where things get a little bit more complicated. So we have feedback patching now, and there's one big caveat with this, and that is that as soon as you start to use feedback patching in Dispatch, our undo history is like, we're basically adding new events onto our undo history. I think this is like a limitation that's like maybe to do with like Ableton's modulation system or whatever. If I figure a way around it, I'll take it out, I'll fix it. But for now, I wanted to put it in because I do really like doing like lots of like interesting stuff with feedback. But just bear in mind that like you won't be able to undo as soon as this is set up. So here, on this first grid row, I'm mapping to the input here. So now C is the only thing we get. So like the signal from C is controlling this input thing here. You'll see as the sine wave gets faster or the carrier gets faster or lower, this starts to move around more. And yeah, like I said before, like if we were to do like, if we were to just let the signal through, like we'd get this kind of behavior down here. So we never really get long notes. But if we set it to sample and hold, yeah, this is like, to me, like sample and hold and feedback patching go like hand in hand, and like they need to be put in together into one update. So yeah, that's all the new features of Dispatch 1.3. You've got this new demo project, you've got quadrature sines, which can also be divisions and multiplications of a leader oscillator. We've got sample and hold, we've got track and hold, feedback patching. Yeah, we also have some drums in this project, which I don't intend on yet. So yeah, hope you enjoy playing with this. There's so much stuff in this to explore now that like I'm kind of playing catch up with myself in terms of these updates. This might be the last update for a while, just while I figure out some new stuff that you can do with this. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this update. Cheers.